We're going to take a little journey through the world that I have traveled and seen myself, where I have opened up my mind to so many different experiences. The adventure of travel is so exhilarating. You'll want more. It's a drug. It's not something that you'll say, I've had enough. It's something you'll say, I want more. And every time you come back, you need to absorb what you have taken in, and you need to stop and think about what it's done to you, because you do change whether you like it or not. And that's what I love about travel. You get to see things that you normally don't if you sit in your backyard. Welcome to Travel Tales with Debika. Today we're going to go to the land of smiles, Thailand. And I have a wonderful, wonderful person with me. Her name is Princess Candy with Tourism Authority of Thailand. I had the pleasure of traveling with her. And we're not only going to talk about Thailand and the people, the culture, the spiritualism that I had picked up from there and that I learned so much from the Thai people, but our little anecdotes when we traveled through Thailand. Candy, it's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you so much for having me, Debika, and thank you for that amazing introduction. I don't often go by Princess, I don't want the world to know, but now that it's out, yes, I am Princess Candy of the Tourism Authority of Thailand, Los Angeles office here in LA. And yeah, we had a great time in Thailand. It took us a long time to get to Thailand, I've known you for a very long time. Finally, the government said, hey, it's time to go with her. So we did. And that was what, 2018?
Yes. It's a long time. It was, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And what a trip it was.
Yes.
It was an eye-opener for me. It was my second trip with Tourism Authority of Thailand. The first time I went, I believe it was Isan area. And that's the southeast of Thailand, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the northeast.
Northeast, sorry. Mm-hmm. And what was very interesting is I didn't even know when I went to Thailand that the Cambodians had come to Thailand. Mm-hmm. That trip I learned in the old days, people didn't have compasses. So when they came from Cambodia to Thailand, they had built temples so they could retrack their steps back to Cambodia.
Oh,
and
it's to me.
Yeah. See, Candy, the
things we learn.
The things we learn.
Thank you, Debika.
You're welcome. But it was also interesting because one of the temples was a Hindu temple that they had built. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was transported back to India, just standing there. And I felt, this feels like India. The weather, of course, sweltering heat, sweat pouring down me. My clothes were wet. I could have wrung them out. It was so hot. But the whole ambiance was amazing. And I remember seeing one of the temples that was built. It was one of the Khmer temples, and the architecture. And we don't seem to realize that when we travel, the importance of when we go to a different country, cultures, how we intermingle and how we enrich one another without any prejudice, without even thinking twice that this is mine and that's yours. It's just incorporating. So what I want to talk about you before we go into any details is about you being Thai, living in America, and how you have incorporated your culture into your American way of life.
I think growing up Thai American, especially being in Los Angeles, I was very lucky. So LA is the biggest concentration of Thai people outside of Thailand. And so for a long time, we've always considered LA to be the 77th province of Thailand. So I think now in Thailand, there's technically 77 or 78 provinces, like they added some more. But at the time back then, we were the 77th. And, here we have a very huge Thai community and there's a Thai temple, but I lived out in the suburbs and I always wanted to find another Thai kid. And, I just never had that. My parents, thankfully, were willing to drive an hour plus every weekend out to the Thai temple, which is the first Thai temple in America, actually, the Wat Thai temple in North Hollywood. And there I did, Thai classical music. I learned the language, I learned the culture, but I think the best thing for me was just to be around other Thai kids and to kind of establish the sense of identity. And, throughout my life, I've definitely had people talk about how are you able to juggle it? How are you able to incorporate that American side with that Thai side? And mind you, there's plenty of things that are always butting heads, but I think that's kind of a part of the journey too, is that how do you mix and match the best of both worlds? I was definitely the kid that went to school with not a regular lunch pail, but I don't know if you've seen those compartments where it's kind of like a tower, and like, you know, the bottom was rice.
Yes.
Is that what it's called? Okay.
That's what we had in India.
Yeah. And so, you know, everyone had a lunchbox, like a Barbie or something GI Joe thing, but I had that, and I busted out with the rice, and then I maybe had some stir fry and soup, and people were just like, what is going on there? And for the longest time, you know, I would be embarrassed, and I would, you know, go home to mom and like, I want spaghetti, give me those sandwiches. And it just never was like that. I wanted the ham and cheese, but the best thing that my parents could do was like maybe butter and jelly. And I was like, oh, but still, you know, they did try. Or like the time that I asked my dad for the spaghetti, you know, this typical tomato sauce and spaghetti. And, you know, one day excited, he was like, I made it for you. So he boiled the noodles, and then he just took a packet of ketchup and, you know, smeared it on top. And he's like, here you go, babe. And I was like, okay. So, you know, there was always that, you know, the whole element of navigating that. But I think that experience really enriched my adult life, because from there, I found my way into this job working for the Tourism Authority. I never thought that I would work for the Thai government, but the best part of it is being able to talk and sell something that I genuinely love. You know, like you go into a place, and when you talk to someone from another company, how often do you meet someone that says, I genuinely love that product? Like, I live and breathe that product. And they did. I lived and breathed Thailand growing up, and here I am living and breathing it with you. So that's pretty much my journey.
I also want to talk to you, Candy, because we've done a lot of trade shows together.
Yes. Our favorite.
I have a favorite. We you know how much I love doing trade shows, right?
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what really gets my goat when I do the trade shows is when I have people, random people coming to me, whether, you know, and usually these are consumers. Oh, I don't want to go to Bangkok because it's too crowded. Or I don't want, Bangkok is not the place. My friends have told me I should fly in and then fly out. But having been to Bangkok, and there are times when I've spent like 3 days, 4 days. I could spend 10 days in Bangkok, to be honest with you. It is so rich in history, you know, and people don't realize that Ayutthaya was the actual place that was the capital of Thailand. Bangkok became the capital after that. Bangkok is very important for another reason, is because you have a port there. It's all waterways. And so the trading started there. Can we talk a little bit about that, and why you also feel the same way as I do, that Bangkok should be explored the way, you know, the way people...
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes, going back to the whole idea, like the many people that we meet, they're always like, I don't want the big city. Let me just like land in Bangkok. Let me get out of there. It's too busy. So the same way that we discovered it together, love that city element. But the idea that in Bangkok, although it is a big metropolis, and we've always compared it to that Manhattan or whatnot, it has so much culture on every single corner. The city itself is massive, but it's also split into different neighborhoods, and each neighborhood has its own unique market and culture within it. There's like really pods of experiences, and every time I go back, I find something new, and I keep finding things that I want to go experience more. You know, like, oh, you know, granted, like the idea of going out to the northern parts of Thailand, going out to the beaches is absolutely amazing, but I can't wait to go back and try that new restaurant that people have been going to for the last, like, you know, 100 plus years, or like these old stories that are just kind of intertwined with everything in the city. Yes, it is a port of sorts. So Bangkok is known as the Venice of the, is it the Venice of the East, Venice of the West, whatever direction that is, but it is our Venice of some sort, right? I'm terrible.
After a couple of drinks, you'll get it.
Yes. So, I mean, that's basically how it's gone. You know, that's how we brought on all the trading. And yes, Ayutthaya was our former capital, but before that there was Sukhothai, and there was all of these other things. Like Bangkok had really become the capital, I think, not even 300 years ago. So a little bit before, you know, independence of the United States down here. So we're relatively new for Bangkok.
Yes. And I found that when I went to Bangkok, I did, you know, Surin, that area, that region.
To the northeast,
really amazing. And that's so untouched. But yet when people come, they talk about, oh, I want to go to Phuket. I want to go to Krabi. But that's not Thailand. You know, Thailand is more the Chiang Rai, Ayutthaya, Sukhothai, like you mentioned, going to Surin, going to Kanchanburi. Really, it brings to life the people. And I'll give my personal experience when I was in Thailand. I remember that I went there for one of the tourism boards, the Travel Mart. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to try using the subway. And I'm not a very adventurous person like you. I didn't have candy at that time. So I took the subway and I got lost. And the interesting part is I found when I opened my cell phone, I had these teenage boys in the same compartment as me giggling. One of them had the courage to talk to me in broken English.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I want to practice my English. And it was such a fun conversation because he was asking about me. And of course, am I married? Do I have children?
Oh, he asked you all of that? Was this a long ride?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was a 20-minute ride. But of course, I got lost. So I said to the young guy, I said, I'm lost. And this is the business card of the hotel that I'm staying at. How do I get back? The older gentleman understood what I was saying, even though we didn't speak each other's language. He, through sign language, told me, he managed to convey to me, he would help me. Oh. And what I love about Thai people is very curious, very shy, very timid. But when you cross that boundary, when you really break that ice, very kind, very beautiful people. So your spiritualism really permeates into every aspect of your society. Spiritualism is very serious in Thailand. So it permeates into your home, your children, the way you eat, your sites, your business. It's all about how you live your life. And that's what I love about Thailand. The different tribes that you have that the people are not really aware of. You have the Chinese, the Indians, and the Cambodians. Right. More that I'm not aware of. So I know that you've been to a lot more regions than I have, because I remember seeing on your Facebook page a temple. You climbed a mountain just to get to that temple.
Oh, yes. So recently I posted a picture of a temple in Lampang, and that's in northern Thailand. And so a lot of people may not realize it, but everyone, when you think of northern Thailand, you think of Chiang Mai. So Lampang is, I believe, a little bit south of that. And so it's an easy, drive between the two. This temple was Wat Chai Chulam. I'll check on the name again. It's a long Thai name, we and our long Thai names. But this temple was built on top of the mountain peaks. So we had to go via truck. At first, when we got to the bottom, I thought, I have to climb this mountain to the top. As spiritual as we Thai people are, I don't know if there was enough spirit in me to get me up there. But thankfully, the ticket lady said, we have a truck that will take you to at least the base of it. And then you kind of have to walk an additional 45 minutes. I thought the experience was absolutely amazing. Like, it was a 45-minute trek after this little maybe 15-minute drive. And, you're on the back of a pickup truck, you're wedged next to who knows who, but, you with strangers then become family within a matter of seconds, right? And you're holding on and everything's shaking, your underarms are shaking, chins are shaking, and we get off and you can see the entire valley, like the blues, the greens, all of these colors. And out of the corner of your eye, you see the peak of the temple. So it's like, all right, team, let's go. And so it's about 45 minutes and you're cutting through the humidity and everything. But along the way, when I did go last year, I met some people who were actually working on building some pavements and stairs. And the whole time they're just like, you can do it, keep going. And I was like, thank you for that. So, Thai smiles all the way. And when we got to the top, you're just in complete awe. There's like wooden platforms that are perched in between like mountain peaks. And they're little pagodas that have actually been strategically placed along the mountains, and you're above it all. And I stayed there for an hour, just like really breathing it in, taking it in. There is so much energy and power. And in my mind, I was like, whose idea was it to put it up here? Thankfully they did, but really, who, why? But, and that's just one of the many things that you can find when you travel. It's just like these creations and just the energy that exudes from such a place.
I find that people tell me, oh, I've been to Thailand, I don't need to go anymore. It's such a tiny country. I've seen it all. But I find there are tiny little places. And every time I talk to you, every time I look at the map or I visit Thailand, I find there's a new place that's been discovered.
Right.
And I find that when this travels so far and they only talk about beaches, I go, why? Why beaches? But there's so much more. We're talking about cloth. We're talking about weaving. We're talking about food. There's so much more. It's such an enriched country, and it's so understated because every time I open a magazine, they talk about Chiang Mai, the best hotel, the best restaurant, Michelin star. But the restaurants we went to, the mom and pop shops, And remember, I got tired of eating at the very fancy restaurants.
Right. We were at the best hotels and you're like, I need to get out of here. Let's get, and we just did.
Yes.
And that's the best experience. The great thing about Thai food, at least in Thailand, is that it's not only Thai food. And going back to like Michelin stars, you know, we have Michelin star like we have like a French Michelin star, and I think we have a Japanese one. Like food in Thailand is very, very diverse. But always my favorite is always going to be those mom and pop shops where they've been probably making that one dish for 30 plus years, and they know every patron that walks in. And when they welcomed two sweaty ladies into their shop, they knew they were in for a jackpot because we were going to order more things. And for those who do not know, portions of food in Thailand are very minuscule, hence probably all of their small waistlines. So when I get there, I'm like, I need 3 orders of this, please. Thank you.
But what about the time when we hired somebody to stand in line for us for the restaurant? We didn't want to stand for half an hour.
Yes. That is also the perk of Thailand, which I don't think a lot of people, well, technically nowadays with like Uber Eats and all of those like takeaway things, technically people are waiting in line for you to pick up your food. But in Thailand, and this is a relatively new idea, like I think when we're waiting for Pad Thai, is that what it was? So yes, Pad Thai Tip Samai, which is a famous Pad Thai place in Bangkok because of all the reviews, and it's, you know, it's like a must eat place. The line is always, you know, 2 hours long, and we successfully paid somebody to stand in line for us. So upon arrival, whoop, there we go. We're like doot, and had our Pad Thai, and it was amazing. It is something that you can do via app. There's actually a whole bunch of things. Grab is the app in Thailand, equivalent of our Uber here. So if we go back again, utilize that Grab and have someone stand in line for you. But I'm sure if we did stand in line, we would have had a magical time as well.
I want you to talk more about the history of Thailand. And when they say, I've been to Thailand, I've been to Phuket, because they don't talk about, you know, the other little islands that are over there that are just as magical. And in fact, personally, I think they're far better than Phuket. Phuket, I find, is overrated. Sorry.
It is okay. It is one of our number 1 destinations. Yes, but in my honest opinion, I do feel as though, you know, if you're going to Thailand for the first time, obviously, like, sure, stop by Phuket, but, you know, make it a stop off point, and then maybe use that as a means to visit smaller islands. Like there's Krabi is obviously a big destination too, but there's islands that are right off the edges of Phuket, like Got Yao Yai, Got Yao Noi, Racha, places that are super, super secluded. You know, you don't have to deal with the hassle, and they're still within distance. Like if you wanted to go back into the big city of Phuket on that island, you can experience that and then, you know, go back to your secluded area. But I think that's the thing, is like when people think of Thailand, there's only like 3 or 4 destinations that pop up, and it's like a recurring thing. You've got your Bangkok, you know, your Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, because they're so close to each other, and like a Phuket, Krabi, or maybe the Samui, right? That's on the Gulf, and that's it. When there is, you know, 70 plus provinces, not to mention the, you know, the different destinations within those provinces, and it's just really a matter of like getting out there and experience it, and then really getting to know the people. You know, my smile, the princess smile and everything, and our slogan is the land of smiles. Yes, Thailand is the land of smiles, but Thai people are genuinely nice. Going back to the kids that you met on the subway, they must have been, at the same time, I can imagine, because if they were my cousin, something, they would have been terrified to have to speak English. Like on written, like I think Thai people, in terms of education, when it comes to a foreign language, they're really good when it comes to like sentence structure, grammar, whatnot. But the actual speaking of it is a whole nother ordeal. And for them to have built the courage to speak to you and to help you, or, you know, or to even have a conversation with you is amazing. And that's true pretty much everywhere. Like in Thailand, if you can't necessarily communicate, or if they can't, you know, decipher what you're saying, there's definitely a lot of body movements, you know, the occasional like calculator, like, oh, it's this and this bot, and they'll type it in, they'll figure out a way to communicate. And all in all, you'll see those smiles and you can't say no.
But I also want you to touch on other places apart from Chiang Rai. And, you know, you have a lot of temples.
You have almost 40,000 throughout the country, yes.
Funny, it's like every temple I go to, it's not the same. It's different. Right. So I need you to touch on those, please.
They're obviously the big ones, you know, like when you think of Thailand, there's like the Grand Palace, or, you know, then that's where the Emerald Buddha is, or the right across the way is Wat Po, which is the temple with the reclining Buddha. So there's obviously the must hits and whatnot, but there are temples sprinkled pretty much in between like every block, and it's really dependent on like, you know, the people who, maybe it's the community or a specific donor, and they all have a distinct story. Like some are older than others, obviously. You know, there's definitely a mix of Hindu temples, just kind of a varying experience. So it's not always just Buddhist temples too. They shouldn't be fearful about the idea of not going in. You know, it's a very welcoming experience. But in terms of history, the oldest temples are obviously in our fairly older capitals. So we have like Ayutthaya, you know, and that goes back like about like what, 300-400 plus years. Then Sukhothai, which is our even older capital, and that's further north, goes back 600 years. That is really where a lot of the history, the makings of this kingdom came about. In terms of like how they're different, you know, they are in terms of architecture, because influences different parts of time, a history, will obviously influence things. Like the temples that you saw out in the Northeast definitely had a very Khmer, but then like infused with like Hinduism and whatnot. And so there's different motifs that are very similar. So that you'll definitely find in the northern part. In northern Thailand, you'll find a lot of like refined wood, lots of wood with like certain arches. For the most part, that's true throughout, is like the ornateness of it, right? Because, you know, obviously in terms of spirituality and our beliefs, you know, you want to give the best of the best. You want things to be the most colored so that you can be seen. But then there are temples, like, for example, there's one small temple that is in the northeastern part of Thailand in the province of Khon Kaen. And I was there about 2 years ago. You didn't go to Khon Kaen, did you?
No.
No. Okay. So this small temple, oh, well, we will put this down on our list and we'll go.
Yes.
It's probably one of the bigger provinces in the Northeast. It's like definitely a big hub. It's like, you know, a small little major city in a little area. And there was a little temple that we went to. The first temple that I've ever been to that wasn't ornate, you know, and the temple itself was about 200 years old. And there were drawings all around the outside. So there were hand-painted drawings made in blue. So the blue was from the natural indigo dye. And I've never seen anything of it. Some of the etchings on it look like a little kid had drawn them, but you know, they dated back like 200 years. And I was excited just to be in the presence of something that I had never seen before, and it didn't look like anything. And that's what made me so excited. And I was ready to step in until I saw a sign that said, "Females not allowed." And I was like, what? I get all the way here and what do you mean? But you know, that stems back to the history of it, correct? And the fact that they don't allow it. But you know, there's a whole tradition. The monk was in there and he would call out to the guys in their group and he'd wave and be like, hey, come in, you know, it's fine. And I felt like, why is there this discrepancy? I want to see this. But you know, tradition is tradition and it's fine. The guy took some photos for me and things like that. But you could see all of the distinct drawings and things. And it wasn't just drawings of Buddhism, because a lot of the temples in Thailand will have pictures of the story of Buddha, you know, and how he came about and walking on the lotus and whatnot. But this temple, in addition to those motifs, had imagery of the community. And you actually saw motifs of people within the community, like weaving or fishing or things like that, which I'd never seen anywhere else. So that was probably a unique aspect. So yeah, I mean, depending on where you are, there's always a bit of culture, local culture that is infused into the design itself, into the experience, but they all kind of have the same general idea from temple to temple.
I remember when we went together, we went with a group, the media group. We went to Wat Po, right?
Yes, the Temple of the Reclining Buddha.
That's the first temple, am I correct? Where they did massages.
That is where Thai massage originated from. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And how they bent your legs and cracked your back.
You love that part, all of the bending. Maybe that's something that people don't necessarily know about Thai massage, is that it's a very all-inclusive experience where it's not just a matter of like rubbing out the muscles. You are put into these really contorted formations and your legs and limbs go in certain angles that you didn't think your body could. But someone's doing it for you. You're just grunting along the way. I know you're laughing because that happened every time. Was there a time where we had a massage and were we in a group room or we were close by, but I definitely heard you? Yes, I heard it all. It was like,
reminds me of the yoga class we took, remember?
Oh, that's right. So we were in Thailand on a wellness trip, mind you. So this wasn't just a regular trip. It was really to discover the health and wellness aspects of Thailand and all in which Thailand has. So it wasn't just like the spas, right? It was learning the yoga, but it was also going to different clinics and learning about all of the random things that, you know, Thailand has. But going back to the yoga thing, we were on the island of Phangan. So if you go to Samui, Phangan is really known for the full moon party. And I was like, let's go, because a lot of people's misconceptions about Phangan is that, oh, it's a full moon party. I don't want to hang out on an island that's filled with partiers. But the full moon only comes out once a month. I mean, so every other time it's great. Where did we stay? I don't even remember where we stayed, but I remember you drinking a lot of wine.
That the French resort.
Yes. Yes, and it was just like a couple of rooms, and it was magical. And
I drank your champagne.
You did. But I would give it to you, I would give anything to you. But there in the middle of the island was, I think it was called Zalan Yoga Studio, or like yoga and wellness. It was a wellness facility that had just opened up. I remember writing it down in the itinerary, and I was like, I'm going to put down a yoga class. Why not? Because I figured, you being Indian, you gotta be like, yoga's in you, right? Isn't it a part of you? So we're fine. Yeah, no. It's not. No. But I think the massive humidity also helped ease the body a little bit too. I just remember as we were doing some sort of downward dog or pigeon or turtle or rattlesnake or whatever position it was, I glanced over at your face and I saw the sweat coming down your forehead and you saying, I hate you. And there was other people in the class, right? And that's the thing, is that we were the ones that were the loudest. We were laughing the whole time.
We're Americans.
Darn these Americans. As our instructor was like, and breathe in, whatever. But I had a great time. I think it was fairly life-changing because it was. I mean, it might have left you with a bit of back pain, but as we were doing our yoga in the morning, we were able to look out at the mountainside,
Excuse me, my friend, you needed wipers for your glasses. You were sweating. They were fogging up.
We were fogging. Well, I wasn't even wearing glasses, but you know what? I was dripping. You were dripping. And then that was great cardio. And then after that, we did a whole walking meditation with a local monk.
Yeah, for 2 hours.
Which you really enjoyed. Yeah.
I loved it. That's what I love about, in travel. When you go off the beaten path and you go to these little places, you meet with people who are interesting. This monk, he was so interesting.
Yes.
He was married. He was very rich, gave up his marriage, gave up money, and became a monk. Yeah. And to listen to him talk, of course, his lifestyle does not agree with my lifestyle, but just to listen to him, to understand the meaning of detachment. Right. And to do the 2-hour walking meditation where you're not talking to each other and your mind, all of a sudden your mind is blank and you're just walking up and down for 2 hours. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. You won't believe me, Candy. When I go for my walks, that's exactly what I do.
So you completely detach. You're just...
Yeah.
That's actually really amazing. So I've never done that experience, and that was the first. And unfortunately, it has still been the first, hopefully not yet the last, but I've yet to go back. When we were sitting, and it was just the two of us talking to him about, spirituality and how it didn't even matter if you weren't Buddhist. There's Buddhist teachings that are very universal ideas, and it's really in you. You didn't have to go into a temple every Sunday, or it had to be extremely rigid. It was really you about being a good person. The way he broke it down for me, even though, I'd gone to a temple, since I was a kid, it made it much more understanding. And then when he said, hey, okay, so we're going to start the 2-hour meditation, I remember asking myself, 2 hours of walking? Where? Right. And we're still at the same place that we did our yoga. So it was this outdoor platform, maybe, a decent amount of space, right? So we were just kind of walking up and down. And I got lost in it too, because I hadn't heard my voice for so long. And I know the world is at a loss when they don't hear my voice, but I didn't hear my voice anymore. And I started to count things, like I was counting tiles, but I was like, no, and I don't know where I was. And I occasionally looked up at you, but you looked so serene and at peace at what you were doing. And maybe I wasn't as focused as I should have, but thinking back to it, I've never had that experience again. And maybe I should integrate it more into what I do daily.
It's so unique and so different. It's taught me how to live my life now. So there are things that happen today that I'm so detached by it, it doesn't bother me. I'm still focused in what I need to get done. And that's what I loved about my travels through Thailand. And, visiting the different temples, I never got sick of it. And the ornate workmanship.
Yeah, the detail.
Yes. The history, can you talk a little bit about the history of the workmanship that's gone into these temples, the glass work
Yes.
and the colors?
So I think this is true for a lot of different cultures and countries, is that workmanship of that level, of that detail is really dying. And a lot of the initiatives in terms of preserving art was really something that had stemmed from the former queen, Queen Sirikit. And, she would have all of these initiatives of like how local communities can really keep those elements intact. And I think nowadays, a lot of stuff is done with machine, but most of those temples, like dating back to that time, were all done by hand. And I think there's still some organizations in Thailand that are still trying to keep things up, like the silversmith work, the textiles and things like that. But I think that's actually something really interesting during this time, especially this time of COVID, when you think about like, where you're going to travel next. What do you want to do? Do you want it just to be a simple, like, I want to hop on a plane and sit on the beach? Like, I think that the way that travel is, like, I'm hoping that people will maybe consider going to the Northeast or going in and learning how to do those crafts, not just because it's pretty, but because it's a dying art. And wouldn't you want to be a part of this association or this group of people who have that ability? Thankfully, Thailand has a lot of museums and stuff where they do still keep a lot of things that you can see close up, especially with like the royal museums. And to think that, how does human ingenuity, how did they come up with this? And that ability, right? Like, I can't even function without the GPS on my phone. Like the magnitude and the capabilities of a human is absolutely amazing.
It is very much so. That's why, I say, don't just think of Thailand as Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai.
Right.
Much more to that. And there are places that you don't know of. And I think also there is a disservice out there in the world where people say, I read in the magazine that this is where I'm supposed to go and this is the hotel. There is no the hotel. It's an illusion. A lot of illusions have been created to pump up something. And my thing is, create your own illusions. Listen to what it is that you're looking for. If you're looking for authenticity, you want to go to Bangkok, and from Bangkok, even if you don't want to travel to different hotels, you can stay in one place and still do offshoot tours from that area. I know right outside, an hour outside Bangkok, there's a pottery place you can go to. And I bought beautiful stone carvings from that area. It's just maybe an hour, 2 hours drive from there.
There's many. Do you remember the name? There's definitely little islands.
I have the names, but you know what? The Thai names really get to me.
Don't worry, it's okay.
I have, but it's right next to, it's before Surin, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, going out in that direction. Oh, yeah. The northeastern part of Thailand is really renowned for the pottery and like that deep history over there too. So, and the weaving too.
The weaving is spectacular because we went to a weaving place, and then the way they were doing the weaving, they showed that it was a combination of Thai weaving, and then also they had other influences into it. And the lady was explaining how the Chinese form of weaving has been influenced, the Khmer influence. So we have to stop and think of us as exclusivity.
Right.
We're not exclusive. There's so much out there. And even in the foods, for example, this shirt that I'm wearing, this in itself is so amazing. We have a story behind the shirt.
We do. We have a story behind everything.
Everything. But what is so interesting is that here's an American, Jim Thompson. He went to Thailand. And when I tell people about Jim Thompson, they go, who, what? I never heard of him. And it's such a shame because you go and he revived Thai weaving. He's the one who brought it into the forefront.
Right. He made it international and gave it fame. Yeah. And then, unfortunately, when did he disappeared? Like in the 60s, 70s?
Yeah, something like that. He went to Malaysia, and I believe he went trekking somewhere in the jungles. Never came back.
Hopefully he has a nice little silk farm out there. But we were lucky enough to go to his house. And that's that central Bangkok. Right. And again, going with you, for as long as I've been with the Tourism Authority, that was my first time going to Jim Thompson's house. Really? My family had kind of grown up within the silk industry. My mom's great aunt, in addition, so there was Jim Thompson and there was lots of other smaller companies, but my mom's great aunt had a silk company as well. I'd always kind of seen people come in with armfuls of textiles into my great aunt's house. And then, you know, Jim Thompson would always be on the back of my mind. And that would be the place that you knew if you wanted the best, if you were looking for the best feeling silks, the best designs, you had to go there. But it definitely came with a price tag. But then when you walked in and you saw first of all, the way that I saw your eyes light up upon opening of these two doors.
Do you want to tell them the story how we went shopping?
So first, we went to Jim Thompson's house in Bangkok, right, which is right up against the small canal.
Yes.
So it wasn't next to the Japia River, but it was further inland in the Siam area, and it's a teak wood house that I think from what I remember, he had taken like different parts of different houses in Thailand and kind of brought them together in this one location. Absolutely awe-inspiring to see it. You know, we did this whole tour. We had a great time. You know, we basically were just saying like, thanks, Jim. Thanks for letting us into your house, you know, like making ourselves at home. And what is a experience without stopping at the gift shop? And I think that's where we opened up a can of worms, like, or like a black hole.
It wasn't in Bangkok.
Well, we started there first. I remember.
Yeah. It wasn't that bad over there.
No, it got worse when we went to the other place. But
that was your fault.
So we did go shopping in Bangkok. You know, you definitely left with like lots of bags. So that was a very, you know, thank you for contributing to the Thai economy and inadvertently my paycheck as a Thai taxpayer. So thank you. But when we got down to Samui, right, and that's where we went for the whole like the rest of our health and wellness trip, we were, oh my goodness, I think our flight was like, we were on our way back to Bangkok. I knew that I was going to be leaving you within a couple of days, and it was like, oh, we're headed out. And you know, the entire time we had talked about how much fun we had at Jim Thompson's house and how much we had gotten there. And you were like, you know, there were some things I just didn't get there. I should have gone back. I was like, Debs, there's a Jim Thompson at the airport in Samui. And you're like, oh no, you know, and we were late. We were already late. So let's say our flight was at 7, okay? And I think we had checked in like 6 something-ish. And I was like, that's already late. We gotta, you know, hightail it through security, get to the gate. You're ready to go through security, but I was like, come on, just one last time. So there we go. We opened up that shop, and those girls did not know what was gonna happen. Oh boy, Hurricane Debika and Candy, here we come in, and everything. I was like, Debs, this looks beautiful. This looks beautiful. And you're like, I'll take it. And I was so excited. I know that the girls were excited. You know, maybe there's some commission on that side, but there was a lot of excitement going on because you know why? Because we were doing it for Jim. Jim, our guy. I knew you loved silks, but really, it was for Jim. When you went to go swipe your credit card, it didn't work because you had obviously, you know, credit card and good on safety that your credit card caught this because it's like, hey, many thousands of dollars are being charged on your card. Alert, alert, I'm shutting down. And we were just like, card's not working. You know, I was ready to give up. I was like, Debs, let's just put it all back. Let's just head out because, you know, we're now like 5 minutes before our plane's going to leave and it's okay. But you were so adamant about this and you were like, you got on a call with somebody in America to say, hey, release my card. I'm about to make a purchase. And I saw you sweating too, because at first I thought, I hope she doesn't feel like, you know, embarrassed or anything about the card. Like, whatever, we're declined. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But I saw it wasn't embarrassment. It was determination that I saw in your eyes that I'm going home with these silks and ain't nothing going to stop me, not even a plane flight. And you did. We walked out of there and we ran through security and I took all of the bags with me because I was like, I didn't want anything to weigh you down because in my mind, I was like, holy moly, we're going to miss our flight. We need to there was just so many things going on in my mind at that time. Yeah. Hightailed it through security. And then I think even the people at security were like, oh, good shopping. And I was like, yeah, you better believe it's good shopping. And so then after security, I'm still holding on to your stuff. I'm holding on to my camera bag and everything and my ticket. And I hear them announce, Debika, and then trying to say my name. And I was like, oh no, they're announcing us. We were the last people to get on that plane. And once again, there we were sweating in a tropical country, a tropical island with drops of sweat, but this time from our silk adventures. I don't think I've ever looked at silk the same way. You know, that this trip with you really changed me on so many levels. For the good, for the better, always, always. So many first times with you. And I think that was what made it special with me, is that, you know, I carry around this tag of like, yeah, I work for Thailand, but every trip is different, right? And I was lucky enough to go with you, and seeing things through your eyes made it exciting to me. Because yes, we did experience things that I had experienced before, but being with you, it was just like, oh, this is a new feeling. And then being able to experience brand new things together was even more exciting for me. And so thank you for that.
Thank you. You know, what I find, people don't realize that when they travel, everything should have a story behind it.
Yes.
Even the local markets that we went to buy the T-shirts from, you remember?
Oh, at the weekend market.
Yes. That in itself has a story. And going to Jim Thompson and really going to his museum, understanding where he came from, his love. He was really, what was he? He was in the army, World War II, if I'm not mistaken. And he came to Thailand, and he revived something so amazing that today I'm able to enjoy it. You look at something, you call me, Debika, you know, they're having a sale at Jim Thompson in the 9-year mark, saying, no.
Hang up the phone, Debika. Don't talk to Candy. Hang it up.
No. Yeah. But you know, everything has to have a story. There is no fun in going and saying, I stayed at this property and there's no story behind that property. You can't do that.
So, you know, whether you're walking into a hotel or a restaurant and you eventually learn that history, or even if you don't know it until you get there, that appreciation for that location is, you know, it expands like 1,000-fold. For me, I just kind of want to envelop myself into this whole experience. Like, really, this family's been making this dish for 50 years. This building has been here for 100 plus years. Like, I want to know more.
You remember the restaurant we went to, Candy, the one in Bangkok? It was a hole in the wall restaurant. I think you, me, and then there was somebody else with us. The food was basically, I think the gentleman, the father or somebody was a cook for the royal family. And it's very hard to get tables over there. You can't make reservations. And it's run by a family. And the food was amazing. It was a hole in the wall kind of restaurant. Yeah. You sat there, you got your food, you ate your food, and it was just spectacular. And that story in itself, knowing that, hey, you know, there's somebody from this family, they cooked for the king, and they've got this tiny little mom and pop kind of store. How would you have known? You know, if you continue, that's why I say when people travel, don't travel just because it's there. Travel because there is something that you haven't discovered and you don't know about. Listen to what other people are saying. I think it's very important that people come to individuals like you and myself for that guidance as to how to make that trip top notch. You know, you go to Thailand, you see the temples, understand why the temples were built. Not so much, remembering the dates is not that important for me. For me, what's important is how did it come into being? Why did it come into being? Who would have thought that when I go to the Northeast, that I'm going to see temples, they were only built because they didn't have compasses at that time. What imagination they had in those days.
Right.
Foresight that I have to figure out how I'm going to go back home again.
Isn't amazing ingenuity? I don't think that people can even fathom any of that now.
I have clients who go to Thailand. You know, Candy, you won't believe it. For the royal family, they make the garland of flowers. You introduced me to people who can do the workshops for our clients. So they do that. Perfume making, you know, these very unique experiences that we add to it. Going to a family home, learning how to cook and make things happen, you know, how to cook the local dishes. Those things are very important to really understand. One set of clients, I arranged for them to go into a village in Thailand. And this is I think it was outside Bangkok. And it was like an hour outside. So they go to this little farm place. They spent a day over there. And it's not so much about playing the local games or getting to know the local people, but just going to a paddy field. And they decided, you know what, we want to know what it's like to harvest rice. So they got there, they harvested the rice, and then we had arranged for them to do a cooking class in the rice field. And they came back saying, what an amazing experience, what a unique way of setting something up instead of going to an institute and learning how to cook.
That's probably one of my personal best experiences too. The
Yeah.
idea of, so for Thai people, right, rice is our staple, right? And so
Yes.
everything is a condiment to rice. In terms of the way that we do rice, right, it's rice becomes the staple, and like everything is paired with the rice. But then being able to go into a farm, and you know, the experience that your clients had, it was probably like what, an hour, a couple of hours. But to think about that painstaking journey for a farmer to cultivate that grain of rice, which takes 3 months, and for it to come to fruition, for then it to be then sold and eaten. I can't imagine leaving that grain of rice left in a bowl, you know, because someone had bent over backwards to put that on your plate for you. Really learning about the journey of that rice grain is incredible. And so I would definitely invite anyone, if you know, obviously that was a great experience for your clients, but for anyone who wants to go to Thailand and really get something authentic, to get into the mud and actually, you know, put in those rice stalks, just to kind of get that feeling, but to realize that farmers do that day in and day out.
You know, it's just like when I have clients go to South Africa, I want them to understand safari, what it takes to create that ambience for a great safari, and anti-poaching, the importance of anti-poaching. And I know you have that in Thailand now. You have elephant whisperers. I haven't done that as yet. And we were supposed to till COVID happened and got canceled. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of elephants in Thai society and how your society has changed as far as, you know, not keeping them enclosed in temples, because they're just as important as they are in India, in Indian temples.
Right. Elephant experience in Thailand, you know, especially now is fairly controversial. You know, there's always, you know, a back and forth between it. And I think that's true for like animals across the board in terms of tourism. But I think that there's always something that people don't understand that aren't Thai, is that the relationship that Thai people have with elephants go beyond, you know, using them as a tool. Because, you know, elephants were predominantly used for logging in Thailand, you know, and so during the logging industry, we really felt like because of their role with logging, they really built our nation, right? And so they are our national animal. And there's also a lot of respect for the elephant itself and for the symbolism behind the elephant. And when you think about elephant experiences now, you know, traditionally, like I remember when I first started TAT, yeah, we would go to those elephant camps where, oh, you know, let's ride on an elephant, let's watch the elephants play a harmonica. And it was very circus-like. And I think, you know, that's how it was, very, you know, across the board for those experiences, like, you know, see the animal, you know, react to tricks. But the experience itself has changed. Those type of places are getting less and less in Thailand. And nowadays you find places like, for example, Patara Elephant Farm or Changchil or Into the Wild, where you learn and get to experience the elephants on a whole different level, where you understand the role of a mahout. And the mahout is, I guess you could say, the elephant whisperer, that the caregiver for the elephant. They may own it or whatever, but they've built this relationship with the elephant and actually, you know, speak and communicate with the elephant to have them do certain things. But that relationship in itself is a whole nother world. Those elephant places that I just mentioned to you, like for example, Patara Elephant Farm, their concept is like you own an elephant for a day. So you're paired up with an elephant, right? And from the very beginning, you learn how to check the health of the elephant itself. And that also means like checking their dung, you know, and I was like, excuse me, this is a part of the experience. What do you mean? And they're like, yeah, you know, based upon how much juice comes out of it is like how much water they've intaken or like how healthy they are. And so they made us kind of like pick up pieces, squeeze it out, you know, filter through. And I was like, this is magical. But at the same time, it was, because it's like, that's how you know that they're healthy. You check the bottom of their feet. You actually brush their hide. And there's a certain way of brushing because, you know, this is healthy, this isn't. Ultimately, within that day, you develop an appreciation for this being. It wasn't a matter of like, let me take a selfie, let me get my Instagram photo and call it a day. You became one with this creature, and hearing, it wasn't just going and experiencing itself. You were also working with the mahout, so you could hear their relationship that they had, and so it only enriched the experience even more. So we're definitely moving in that direction, and as a tourism board, we're still in the process of kind of like coming up with like a group of, or a list of like the ones that have reached a certain like certification or like verification of like, you know, check off like these elephants have reached a certain standard. Elephant experiences are of a certain standard. But hopefully, when we do get back, I would love to experience something like that with you.
I would like to, because I believe you also have an elephant whisperer, where this lady, you're the one who introduced me to her on the internet. You know, you showed me her site.
Oh, yes, from the Elephant Nature Park. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And she calls out to them by names, and they know that she's calling out to them. They come running to her, and she's basically saved them. I think it was from logging and from cruel animal.
She actually gets elephants from throughout Thailand and some of the neighboring countries too, like Cambodia and whatever, injured ones. Some of the elephants maybe have stepped on landmines or whatever, but she'll find a way to bring them to the facility.
That's what I like. I feel there is so much to Thailand that you cannot really encompass it in one conversation. There are so many other, and you can't really touch on Thailand on a whole because you won't be doing justice to the country. That's my feeling. Thailand is a country that can be visited again and again. That people need to realize that. You know, it's a misconception. I've been there once and that's it. I don't need to go back.
And it's hard because, like, you know, for a typical, you know, American tourist, how much vacation time do you really have? You have like, what, 2 weeks or something at most? It's impossible to just like visit everything. And I think that's kind of a reoccurring theme for us, that luckily a lot of people say, like, I've gone once and I got to go back again. Like, there's something that I need to see again. So we do have a lot of returners for sure.
Before I end, I want to ask you, Candy, you as an American Thai lady, right? Yes. My princess, what leaving remark would you like to give to the people who will be listening to this podcast or watching it? What would you like to say to them about Thailand?
The best thing I can say about Thailand is, like, be open-minded about the experience. And that's true for travel in general. Thailand is extremely diverse, from the food, from the attractions, from just, you know, basically everything across the board. Don't immediately turn yourself off to something that may look a little bit different, you know, like, especially when you're traveling, the best thing is to just kind of dive in, you know, and just take it all in, because, you know, who knows what tomorrow will bring, but just have a great time.
Yes. Candy, thank you so much for joining me. I want to thank you so much for your time. It has been so great having you on the show. Whether I'm traveling with you or talking to you, it's always a very unique experience.
It is. Oh, I miss you. When is COVID over so we can hug?
I know you, but we will do it soon. We will do it. I love you, Candy. Please take care of yourself.
Thank you. And hopefully I'll see you in Thailand, Debika.
That's a promise, not a threat.